Presenting Benedict and Burnham's award this evening is Robert Klansko, retired manager, Engineering Environments, Anaconda American Brass, and representing the 2015 Hall of Fame alumni, Bridgeport Brass. Okay. As Benedict and Burnham is no longer in existence, the award will be accepted by Rich DuPont of the Advanced Manufacturing and Technology Center and will go on permanent display in the American Manufacturing Hall of Fame at Housatonic Community College. When Aaron Benedict stood looking over the Naugatuck Valley and its river in 1812, did he catch a glimpse of what would be created there? Either directly through his efforts or the efforts of his colleagues and collaborators, Brass Valley became known the world over for its bright, honey-hued brass. Benedict is a study in both the challenges and lucky breaks inherent in manufacturing. He began his operation during an extremely unpopular war, supplying a deeply unpopular U.S. Army. At one time, he failed and almost lost his business due to the quality of his product. He shared his technology with all, allowing a tremendous amount of competition into the market. Yet he is known as the father of Brass Valley, and his name is synonymous with the merging of copper and zinc. Every brass company in the United States can trace the direct correlation from his roots. This is the story of Benedict. This is the story of United States brass.
Today, the Naugatuck Valley lies tranquil, with nary a smokestack in sight. The remains of the factory stand as silent testimony to an industry that has passed Connecticut by. It seems hard to believe that the American brass industry was born here. The innovation that created the brightest hue of any brass in the world was rolled and cast in these buildings. There was a time when 50% of the goods in a hardware store were made in Connecticut, and those copper and brass mills had a global impact from the early 19th century through the Second World War. It was golden brass, and not just in color, as the milling and rolling of brass made wealthy men of the owners who built the factories and propelled the valley into world prominence in the alloy industry. Early on in the 19th century, most brass buttons were imported from England, but when the War of 1812 broke out, the fledgling United States was cut off from its button supply. That's when some small button makers in the Waterbury area flourished to meet the needs of the growing army. Aaron Benedict began making ivory and bone buttons. Around the same time, James Scoville and his partners acquired the first brass rolled button company in the United States in Waterbury. In 1823, Benedict began to make rolled brass buttons, but Benedict could not match the rich golden color of the English brass and could not compete with the imports. At the time, it was illegal for metal workers in England to immigrate to the United States for fear of the Americans stealing trade secrets. It appeared Connecticut brass industry was over before it started. Then everything changed. An Englishman named James Croft began working for the Scovilles. Scoffing at their antiquated and inferior equipment, Croft convinced the Scovilles and Benedict to allow him to return to England and procure heavier machinery. Croft returned from England with an expert toolmaker, and the start of the modern brass industry was born. Benedict began rolling his own brass in 1824. With the help of the two Englishmen, a richer hue of golden brass could be achieved than ever before in America. For years, Benedict's brass was consistently sought out for its quality and color, and others in the industry could not match it. The company grew rapidly. They made pins, doorknobs, buckles, clocks, burners, and batches. Several other brass companies were started by associates of Benedict. Soon, Benedict was declared the father of Brass Valley. In 1894, the Benedict and Burnham began manufacturing the most innovative seamless tube on the market. The company merged with other companies to form American Brass in 1901. By 1909, American Brass manufactured 2/3 of all the brass in the United States, consumed 1/3 of all copper produced in the country, and was the largest fabricator of non-ferrous metals in the world. Today, the American Brass factory stands silent, deep in the shadow of the man who created Connecticut's River of Gold.
I formally induct Benedict and Burnham into the American Manufacturing Hall of Fame. If we could just have one more, pay attention for one more minute. Bob Klansko, who is the head of our Research and Selection Committee, has a very special gift for the Hall of Fame this evening.
Rich, because you're accepting an award for Benedict and Burnham, and Kathy, I'm pulling a Kathy Saint tonight, ad-libbing. I represent 3 generations in the brass industry, and 30 years ago, the last major brass mill in Connecticut officially closed. The Century Brass Mill in Waterbury was the largest integrated brass mill in North and South America when it closed. 4 million square foot under roof. It's where the Brass Mill Mall is now. Their iconic product, and the iconic product of the brass industry, was the Century Brass Duck. It was a forged 260 alloy duck, highly polished and lacquered. Many people offered their firstborn children to get one of these ducks. And along with the Benedict and Burnham Award, I have an original Century Brass duck inscribed Century on the bottom in Century Brass blue. They had their own blue color. It was much like the blue of a copper ore. So this goes along with the award tonight, Rich.